welcome to Hmong TV. This is Nancy Her, and I have Johnny Howard here in the office. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we have Johnny Howard running for City Council Ward 1 in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we wanted to ask him some questions to get to know him a little bit better and why we should vote for him. So, Johnny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in St. Paul for over 30 years and been done neighborhood organizing for 30 years. Ward 1 consists of Ramsey Hill, Lexham, Snellham, parts of the North End, but I would say most importantly it represents Ward 1. And I'm saying that because we have a large Hmong community in the Frogtown neighborhood. And so I want to make sure that I reach out to the Hmong community to tell them, on my literature it says Ward 1 for everyone. And when I say that, I mean that my history has been working with all people. I'm not a community organizer, I'm a neighborhood organizer, and so that means I've worked with the business community, the educational and the spiritual community, but most importantly I've worked with the cultural community. I've worked with the Hmong community, I've walked the streets with the Hmong community, I've stood on corners with the Hmong community. General Vang Posse, you got a picture of General Vang Powell here. He walked the streets of Frogtown with me. And so I understand diversity, I understand being of a different culture, I understand what it means to feel by yourself, and I know how to work with people.
So yeah, you mentioned General Vang Powell. You also said that you did a speech there at his soul release ceremony.
I got to speak at his soul release ceremony, and I look at his work so similar to what we need today. Moses led his people, they say, to a promised land. He had the courage and the fight in him to lead his people to America to start over and start a new life. And that's why I was so pleased and honored to be a guest and on the podium to speak at his soul release ceremony. But it's just more importantly that now, how do we carry on his legacy? That's making sure that Hmong people understand what it means to be part of this neighborhood, this city. St. Paul was based on citizen participation. So as we grow our Hmong community in this city, we need to make sure they understand that this district council system is where you begin to learn the neighborhood. It's where you begin to learn city policy. The district council system is where you begin to learn how the government works in St. Paul. And that's how we strengthen our families. That's how we build our neighborhoods, by educating our people. And so I don't see a lot of Hmong people on our nonprofit boards other than the organizations that represent Hmong. But it's bigger than the Hmong community. It's our neighborhood. And so we need to make sure we get Hmong people on all our different housing boards. We need to get Hmong people on all our different business boards. But more importantly, on our district councils, that's where our neighborhood is set up, and that's what it's based on. And so looking at some of our younger Hmong folk, we need to get them involved in the youth boards and the district councils so they can start preparing themselves to know this city. And you think about Chubus, you know what I mean? John Choi's. These guys have walked up through the ranks, but they knew the neighborhood. We got to make sure that all our young children and all our families know about citizen participation. And that's one of the things that I'll bring to the neighborhood. I'm not going to be a downtown politician. I'm going to be at your door. I'll be on your porch, hopefully at your dinner table, you know, meeting with you and talking with you.
Now, with the district council, that's where they can actually come and help make decisions on getting their voices heard on what's good for their community in that neighborhood. Is
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. You know, the district councils, they help set up the zoning laws, how fast you ride down the street, where a stop sign should be, where a slow children playing sign should be. They help set up all those different type of things. They decide when houses should be torn down, built up. That's where you build your neighborhood, on those district councils. And we got to get the Hmong community more involved in the neighborhood planning. That's for our families.
So how would someone who, a Hmong person who is interested, how would they join that? Where do they go?
Yeah, you should be calling your council member or the mayor's office but more importantly, your council members should be coming to you and telling you about the neighborhood. And that's why it's important to elect a council person who's been out there in the neighborhood and actually have done the work. I have 30 years of experience of walking the streets of Ward 1, 30 years of experience of walking the streets of Frogtown, 30 years of experience of working with all people, not just black people,
That's
not just
very
Hmong
impressive.
people, not just white people. All people are important to me. And that's the message that I want to send. That's the message I've always sent, that all people are important to me.
And they're just your neighbors.
They're just my
Everyone's
neighbors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you've worked with the Hmong community before. Tell me about an experience with that in your neighborhood.
You know, we had Hmong families. We had a bad gang problem going on in Frogtown. It was a big a lot of violence going on. Our Hmong families down on Sherburne were being attacked. They were getting rocks and boulders thrown through their windows all day long, all night long. We put our members of the Block Club, we put on our T-shirts that said Frogtown Power, Frogtown Pride, and we patrolled those streets at night and told those families it's all right to go to bed, it's all right to sleep, tell your family to relax. But I like to tell people we didn't do that because they were Hmong families. We did it because they were our neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to be about, is that we're all in this together. Whether you're black, white, Hmong, or white, some things we have in common we shouldn't forget. This geographic neighborhood, and that we all love our families, and that we all want our families safe. And so we took those streets back with our families and just to make them safe.
Wow, I'm very impressed. You have a lot of passion in it, and absolutely that's where your heart is at, in making sure that your neighborhood is safe and that it doesn't matter what color they are. So I really like that.
I just want, we can do so much better. St. Paul's a great city that can be even better, and that's when we educate, motivate, invite, involve, and engage people of all colors to be part of the process. And I'm the type of guy, I want to lead that process. I say I want to lead it, but I understand in order to be a good leader, you got to be a good listener. You got to be a good listener in order to effectively lead. It's not about what Johnny wants. What do your people want, Johnny? And when I say my people aren't black. My people aren't white. My people aren't Hmong. They're all of that.
Yeah.
They're all of that. It's a big old bowl.
Yeah, and I really like that. Because, with the United States being so diverse, even the Twin Cities, I also look forward to that day when Hmong people have an event and, different races show up for it to attend, like the Freedom Celebration at Como or the New Year at the River Center in the Metrodome. I mean, I can't, all of us, I speak for most of our people in our community. Even here at Hmong Village, we would love to see different races come in because we are one people. Everyone's the same. So I really like your vision and dream.
And we got to do better with that. I'm glad you said that. We got to do better with that. Our recreation centers, our Hmong children are to be able to go to our recreation centers and have a real comfort in walking in. We got baseball, basketball, football. A lot of our little young boys play soccer. But let's get past ball bouncing. We should have some arts programs inside our recreation centers. Our computers ought to be on inside our recreation centers. We ought to have some cultural programs going on inside our recreation centers so that little black kids can learn about what some little Hmong kids went through, their families went through. So some of our little Hmong children can know what some African American kids went through and all other cultures. But our rec centers should not be locked. The rooms should be open, and we should be talking about cultural programs. Our day-to-day folk ought to have cooking classes and sewing classes and reading classes and writing classes right in our rec centers so that our children can see mom and dad working together. When you see little black boys, they see Hmong men and black men and white men sitting together as neighbors. See, that's what I think you're talking about when you talk about the Hmong New Year. I've been to a couple, so it's a great celebration, but African Americans ought to be there. The same fights that African Americans went through, the Hmong community went through those same fights.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Those
Yep.
same battles over being respected.
Yep.
Those same battles over just decent, just average human rights. The Hmong communities have went through those fights,
Yep.
and so have African Americans. We ought to come together and just talk about that, and how do we move forward to make sure that our children, our children's children, don't fight the battles that we fought over and over again. And so we do have to try to talk about how do we get our two communities to really realize we're in this thing together. I know that, you know, for instance, over in Laos, and I've talked to a lot of Hmong people who have somewhat of a distrust with the police department because of the way things happen there. Well, right here in St. Paul, we put together an agreement with the St. Paul Police Department, former police chief Bill Finney, and the interim council member Nick Kalik, and the NAACP put together an agreement that St. Paul police officers give a business card out now.
Okay.
And they ask for your ID, you ask for their business card.
Yeah.
But that's a good relationship. But we got to make sure that if a young Hmong boy is pulled over,
Yeah.
if a young black boy is pulled over, they're treated fairly.
Right.
They're treated right. And we got to make sure that our elders know that they're pulled over, that they should be able to trust the police to protect them.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about that. That's an educational process that we got to do together as a neighborhood and as two different communities of color.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to understand, that we start off as communities of color, we start off a little bit behind.
Yeah.
But as we work together, we're going to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do, is help our communities move forward.
Yeah. I absolutely love your idea of opening the rec center for the little kids to see, you know, what you said with the little boys seeing that their fathers of different colors are working together. And I agree with that. It absolutely starts with our children. You know, that's where it all starts. We grow up in what we see and what we learn. That's who we become. That's what we find that is acceptable, and that's how we continue. And I absolutely agree that that is definitely a way to help begin that process.
You know, racism starts at the dinner table.
Yep.
You know, it starts at the dinner table because you have a fear. We need to invite more people to the dinner table so that our children can see that we all can get along,
Yeah.
that we can all work together. You know, I'm running on the Green Party. One of the most exciting things about that is I'm meeting so many gardeners, so many people planting food. If you garden together, you know, you get to talk a little bit. As you eat together, you get to talk a little bit. Our children need to see that. And then more importantly, our elders, they need to have that comfort that they just can just get out there in the air and work. They're going to live longer. It's healthier.
Yeah.
But our children just need to see the different cultures coming together and working together.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we have the voting on Tuesday, November 5th, and you are running against Kajol Kong and Dai Tao. What sets you apart besides being 30 years in experience and having a passion? What other things do you want our people, our voters to know besides that?
That I've done the work. I know how to do the work. I've done the work. You know, when you hear a problem, you know, they say a problem, M. Scott Peck said, a problem will remain a problem until somebody assumes the responsibility of solving it. We had a problem with crime in that neighborhood, and so we took on crime. We helped, I was one of the founding members of the community court system. I worked with Judge Cohen, and we created community court to address misdemeanor crime in our neighborhood. And so we heard about a problem, we identified a solution, we made it happen. We didn't have a business organization, nobody addressing business in the Frogtown community. We heard about a problem. I was one of the founding members of the Frogtown Action Alliance. So I've been out there doing this work. I've written 2 state laws and 3 city ordinances.
Wow.
And so it's just the type of work that I've already been engaged in. I've served on the city's Business Review Council. I've served on the city's Human Rights Department, the city's Housing Task Force, and I've chaired probably 30 different organizations in Ward 1, making a difference in people's lives. And that's the job or the council person is to listen to you, listen to you, listen to you, and then act.
Yeah.
And that's important. It's not about what Johnny wants to do. What did your people say they want, Johnny?
Yeah.
You hear that and then you act on that. The difference is the 30 years of experience, but actually my feet have been out there in the street walking throughout Ward 1 and walking with all the different cultural groups and community groups to make a difference in people's lives.
Now, I remember earlier you said that you also helped the neighborhood start the Frogtown Power.
That was one of the most negative neighborhoods in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Every time there was a drug buzz, a drug raid, a shooting, a killing, they said it was in Frogtown.
Mm-hmm.
We put together everything we could. We put T-shirts on neighbors that said Frogtown Power, Frogtown Pride, because we wanted to be intentional in changing that image of our neighborhood. For Christmas, we gave every neighbor a coffee mug that said Frogtown Power, Frogtown Pride.
Yeah.
We reconverted our football program to Frogtown Football. We created an employment program we called Frogtown Four Seasons. We were intentional about taking that negative image and turning it positive. And that's what, as people of color, we got to do that.
Yep.
We got to make sure every negative image they have of our people, we address that, we change that, because we're good people.
Yep. And we
We're
take
smart
ownership
people,
in it.
and we take ownership.
And
Our children need to see that. As communities of color, we got to take our seat at every table there is, saying, I want to be engaged, I want to be involved, so make sure you invite me to do that.
Yep.
And that's what I'll do as your council member.
Well, that's great. Now, with the Frogtown area, with the University Lightway, how do you feel about that?
You know, if you go back in time, University Avenue was a ghost town. It really was. It was the Hmong community, not by themselves, but over 50% of the businesses along University Avenue, when it was a ghost town, was opened up by Hmong people. They started opening up little small shops, and they struggled through all the hard times of rebuilding, struggling to open up their business and stay around. And then what bothered me was when light rail came in, there was no plan to help them survive that process. And so the plan came along later, but we'd already lost some businesses.
Yeah.
And so now we got to figure out a way that we work to rebuild and re-engage and bring some life back to University Avenue. We got to get neighbors in both directions, north and south, coming up to University Avenue and shopping. We need to unify University Avenue, but that's with all people. All people ought to be coming to shop in our shops. We got light rail, it's here. We got to celebrate it. We got to embrace it, but we got to use it. It got to be a tool to bring people to support our local businesses. But more importantly, we got to go out into the neighborhoods and get neighbors to come up to University Avenue and shop and help these businesses stay around that help University Avenue stay around.
Yeah.
And so we got to figure out how to engage people, and it can't be a Hmong thing. Can't be a black thing. It got to be a people thing.
Yeah.
We got to make sure we talk to people, and that's what we got to work on, is making sure that all people in Ward 1 feel really comfortable and really safe to come up to University Avenue and shop. Walk up there and have a meal, walk home, you walk it off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you do win, that's definitely one thing that you're going to look at taking care of.
We're going to unify, and we're going to bring some excitement back to University Avenue.
Bring some life into it.
A lot of life and a lot of excitement. We'll do that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to talk about housing, too.
Okay.
You know, everyone deserves a decent place to live. But when I talk about housing, I like to tell people, whether you're renting your home or buying it, it's your home. Once you sign your lease, that piece of property that you move in, it becomes your responsibility to take care of it. And so we need decent, affordable housing for all people. Even if you're leasing, that piece of property you lease ought to be clean. It ought to be safe. I want to make sure we do that. I want to make sure that everyone has a decent place to come home to. And then when they want to buy, I want to make sure we're creating programs that help people purchase their own homes. And those that want to rent, we want to make sure we got decent rental programs set up that people can get into their homes. Now I tell people, a friend of mine always says, the best social service program in the world is a job. And so we want to train and employ people so they can purchase their own homes or at least decent places to live. But in America, we shouldn't have no homeless people.
Yep.
And so I want to make sure that we begin to address that issue over in Frogtown, over in Ward 1, that we're taking our homeless people and putting them together on these empty houses and getting families into homes.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's Johnny Howard running for City Council Ward 1 on Tuesday, November 5th, who believes in everyone being the same no matter what color you are. And
you know, I tell people, with your 10, if we can get everybody, I want to be number one. I want to be a number one choice only because I truly understand and I truly love working with people. But if everybody would take 10 people to the polls with them and vote Johnny Howard number one, we'll take this great city, this great ward, and make it one of the best in the city. And that's my promise, that I'll go door to door. I'll be with you throughout the whole fight, making Ward 1 a better place for all people, not just black, not just Hmong, but for everyone.
Yep. And that's where his passion's at. So vote for Johnny Howard. Thank you for watching us on Vote